Welcome to Fancounters. My name's Nick.
And I'm Elizabeth.
And you can find us on Facebook at our private group, Sharpie Nation. Just search for that, request to join, and you're in. It's easy as that, and you'll find out all the Fancounter information you want to know ahead of everyone else. So that's a place to go. Where else can they contact us?
They can get us at Twitter.
Oh, yeah?
At Fancounters Live.
Wow. That's amazing. Can they email us? Like if they want, like say I'm a listener.
Oh, for heaven's sakes.
And
you can reach us at hello@fancounters.com.
On the show this week, we're going to talk about organizing your life.
Yeah.
We've kind of been doing these shows every other week or so about making ourselves better people. Probably because I'm trying to help myself. But spring cleaning is around the corner, at least here, hopefully. And this will get us on track. Speaking of spring cleaning.
Yes.
We talked many weeks ago about these guinea pigs that you had. Do you still have these guinea pigs that your 8-year-old daughter is not taking care of anymore?
Well, she's 9.
Oh, she's 9. Sorry.
Yes. We have decided to keep the guinea pigs, and there is a reason they are called pigs. They are quite the messy ones.
I would not have them in my house. I'm sorry.
Well, I have to tell you, we exercise them every night, and currently the exercise room is our bathroom where we put down a blanket, and they have all these toys. And because they're nocturnal, about 6:30, 7:30, 8:30 around there, they're hilariously wide awake. And so they do this thing called popcorning.
Okay.
Where they kind of look like they're just jumping out of the air, and they run around and chase each other and popcorn. And last night, Mark and I had them in the bathroom, and unfortunately, until the new pig pen arrives, which is coming in a couple of days, we're kind of trapped in the bathroom for this half hour, 45
Why can't you
minutes.
just leave them run around?
Because they think they could get into like garbage, and we have wooden cabinets, and they start to chew on the cabinets because they chew on wood.
Okay.
And so they just can't, they're not trustworthy. So until the new pig pen comes that they can be out in the family room, then they can be out longer and we can all kind of enjoy them together. They need to be trapped in this space. And it was funny because Mark was like already ready for bed. So he doesn't have any pants on, but he has on his bathrobe, which is his, nightly MO, even though I've bought like 10 pairs of fleece pants. Put them on. Well, you need to know this because the guinea pigs kept running around his legs, and because there was nothing on his legs, the guinea pigs would startle the crap out of him. But God forbid he be watching the guinea pigs. He's on his iPad rather, doing his thing. And so someone would come over and start nibbling on the back of his foot, and he'd be like, ow! And I'd be like, pants, dude. If you had on pants, they'd be nibbling on the pants.
True.
So far, the pigs are staying. They are quite cute. We are quite into the routine. They, like I said, the messy part is that they have this bedding that goes everywhere. And I had bought very heavy bedding that was made out of like recycled egg cartons. And so it was like a much heavier one. And while I was gone on vacation, Mark bought a bale of literally white tissue paper whipped up. And so every time they run around, it goes, whee, as the paper just lightly floats through the entire room. And I have now set up a shop vac that lives permanently near the guinea pigs, and I am constantly vacuuming everything. And when this bale is gone, we're going back to the egg carton one because this has got to go.
I'm hearing a lot of I'm doing this and I'm doing that. Does Lily, the person who's supposed to be responsible for the guinea pigs, do anything?
She does.
Oh.
So Lily's job is to help. They have to be fed every morning, and every night they need to be kind of restocked. So every morning, Lily puts hay in the hay holder. She puts food in their dish, and she fills their water. I chop vegetables, and then she does put the vegetables down. Now, I do have to clean out the cage, and I don't really want her cleaning out the cage because I really just don't think it'll be done right.
Properly,
and I don't want to smell that.
Yep.
And then at night, she does again reload the food and the hay. And really, most nights when she doesn't have dance, she likes to play with them. She likes to come in the bathroom and do it. She just was so exhausted last night that she just laid on her bed and kind of read. And like I said, I believe when the new pig pen arrives and we can kind of put them in the living room or the family room where everyone is moving around, she will be much more engaged with them. But she's right. She doesn't like to be trapped in the bathroom any more than they do.
Yeah.
So I think it's going to get better. But, if it doesn't, we'll just have to wait and see because, we go on a week-long vacation for spring break and they'll have to go visit someone. And we go on a month-long summer vacation and they will have to visit someone because they're not safe in the RV. The temperatures get too low and there's just too many dangers in the RV for them to come along.
They are not going to visit here, okay.
I was going to suggest that possibly the girls would like to test out guinea pigs for a week.
On today's show, we are just going to stop, seriously, because life is moving way too fast. I'm not sure about that, by the way.
Okay, we'll get back to it.
As much as I think I've got it together, Elizabeth, I have messes everywhere. Little messes of clutter or junk mail, and even the 2 pounds of artwork that my kids seem to bring home every day from school. I have messes in my schedule. It's jam-packed. I've got to fit another thing into my day. You know what that's like because I can barely get you here to tape a show.
Yep.
Life is tough. I tell my kids that. Life is the hardest thing they're ever going to do. Is that helpful advice? Probably not. But what's a guy like me to do?
Today's guest is going to offer you a little insight on how to clear up some of that clutter from your life. Laurie Palau is the author, speaker, and podcaster whose mission is to help you live simply so you can spend time focusing on what's important. I'm going to tell Laurie to give you a little pep talk, Nick, because Laurie provides education, motivation, and solutions for people who are tired of feeling overwhelmed, overextended, and overworked.
That's me. My hands in the air. Her current book is titled Hot Mess, a practical guide to getting organized, and is available on her website, simplybeorganized.com. That's the letter B. Or you can also find it on Amazon. After you listen to the show, don't miss her podcast, which is appropriately titled This Organized Life. It's time to get back on track. We're going to do that right now.
Coming to you from nowhere near the entertainment capital of the world, this is Fancounters with Nick and Elizabeth on the PodFix network.
There was this mob of people, and they're screaming my name.
Crazy fans.
Stop following me. Don't come around my house. If you do, the cops are going to be at yours. If I'm having dinner with my wife, don't sit down at my table. Don't follow me into the bathroom. Can I take a picture? We're going to, oh my God.
I think this guy wants to fight me. Ended up being a fan.
I'm the only one that's ever been on Sam Jackson and lived to tell about it.
Well, guess what? I have a big surprise for you.
That's why we call it Fancounters.
I don't think you're going to last on the air very long.
Laurie Palau, welcome to Fancounters. Thanks for being here.
Oh, thanks so much for having me.
Now, we did have a little miscommunication about what time this interview was going to be at, so Elizabeth did have to leave, so I've got this show all to myself. Finally! No, I'm kidding. So let me get to my first question. I talked about in the opening how I couldn't help but feel overwhelmed by the amount of clutter that seems to be at my house. What best practices do you recommend for removing the unnecessary items from our homes?
So it's a great question. And I think, most of us, I would say, like to operate in a place where they feel that there isn't overwhelmed with, a lot of clutter overwhelming us. And what I always tell people to do is start to figure out where the clutter came from, what area is causing you the biggest amount of stress. And a lot of times it's going to look different for everybody. And ultimately we end up with physical clutter, but it doesn't always start that way. It might just start because we feel like I've identified like 5 clutter pitfall areas that most people fall into.
Okay.
And I can just kind of quickly run through them and see if any of them resonate with you or your listeners out there.
Okay.
So the first one is procrastination. So regardless of what area it is, so whether it's overflowing clothes or piles of paper, or, you're just super busy that, stuff is falling through the cracks because you're just, overscheduled. A lot of times procrastination can stand in your way, especially if you're like, I'm just going to get to it later.
Right.
And then that later never really happens. And then clutter builds up. The second pitfall is what I call indecision. And I see this a lot with people where when we talk about kind of emotional clutter. And a lot of people have this fear of making a mistake. And it's, what if I got rid of this and I needed it? And that could look like the form of, you get junk mail and you're like, is this something I need to hold on to? Am I going to need this? Should I keep it? So you don't want to do the wrong thing.
Right.
So a lot of times people go, I'm just going to put it over here and I'm not going to make a decision. And that way I can't be wrong. But what happens is that indecision winds up, accumulating down the road and becoming clutter when you look at it. The third area is guilt. And again, this can come in the form of, I spent a lot of money on X, Y, and Z.
Mm-hmm.
So I feel like I need to hold on to it. It could be something like, oh, so-and-so gave this to me. My kid made it. This is from, a family heirloom. I don't really like it, but I feel bad getting rid of it.
Yes. Mm-hmm.
So guilt stands in our way from making an educated decision that will help us remove that clutter from our lives. And then the fourth area is just flat out overwhelm, like you said, where we say, okay, you know what? Today's the day, whether it's you're going to spend a Sunday afternoon or you're going to spend, say I'm going to declutter, my garage, or I'm going to sit down for a couple hours and go through my office that, is vomiting papers, whatever it is. And you say you're going to do it and you walk into that space and you're just hit with this wave of overwhelm where you don't even know what to do first. You don't know how to approach it. So even though you want to do it, you're just not sure the best strategy to do that. And so that paralyzes people a lot.
I have a home office that gives me that problem a lot. Yep. I walk in and I have really good intentions, but it just doesn't happen.
Totally. Yeah. And then the fifth area is time. And that's just strictly like, I want to do this. I'm prepared to do it. I've emotionally made peace with these things, but I'm just so doggone busy, whether it's with work or with family or whatever you're doing, that you need to carve out and dedicate time to doing these tasks. So when you look at each of these clutter pitfalls, you can suffer from one of them or you can suffer from all of them. It's really, I think it comes and ebbs and flows for people depending on kind of where they are in their life and where they are with their clutter struggles.
You do have an amazing knack of developing systems to help people organize their daily life. So I'm kind of wondering, have you always been really good at keeping your life running smoothly, or is this something that you had to develop yourself over time after you've been fed up with your disorganization?
It's probably a little bit of both, to be honest. So yes, I definitely tend to be a little bit more of that quote unquote type A personality in terms of wanting to have some level of organization in my life. But it really, my whole business, my whole practice of doing this has just developed over a need of wanting to reclaim time and doing the things that I want. And so I think when I started incorporating and looking at efficiencies and organization as part of my self-care and just part of my daily maintenance of life, as opposed to just something else on my to-do list, I kind of reframed it and started refining on strategies. And for me personally, I'm a mom. I have my own business. I'm super involved in our community. I have a lot of kind of different, areas hats that I wear and, things that I'm kind of constantly trying to juggle and keep all those balls in the air. That if I didn't have specific, plan of action of how I was going to execute these things, it wouldn't get done. And you can apply that to anybody, whether you're, in school or you're having, a career and a hobby or whatever season of life you're in. We're all super busy. And it's just a matter of how productive are you going to be. And so over the years, I've worked to kind of figure out what works and what doesn't. And the one thing I can tell you is I personally don't believe that there's a one-size-fits-all approach. And I know that there's like a lot of buzz these days about, ways that you should approach things or fold clothes or do whatever.
Right.
And I think that if that works for you, great. But I have 2 kids that are 2 totally different people, and strategies that work for one do not work for the other. And I see that with my clients. And, I think it's really important to know kind of, are you somebody that, I always talk about having different clutter, not just your clutter pitfalls, but where's your dominant source of clutter? Is it coming from the physical aspect? Is it more emotional, or is it more calendar driven? And once you can kind of identify that and then identify the pitfalls, it allows you to develop a roadmap that's going to make sense for you in the ways that you personally struggle. So you have to do a little bit of kind of introspection in order to make that behavioral shift that's going to be more lasting.
Now, I did visit your website, simplybeorganized.com, and you've got a really neat quiz on there. You've mentioned this before, to find out what kind of clutter you have. Now, when I took the quiz, I had emotional clutter, so I feel attached to things that I refuse to throw away. Elizabeth, on the other hand, had calendar clutter. So we've got kind of a couple different issues going on here. So for me, how do I overcome feeling so attached to all these things?
Well, I think that's a great question. And, as I was going through the pitfalls earlier, emotional clutter tends to stem from one of 2 areas, and it's either guilt or fear. So it's the fear of, what if I get rid of something? Am I going to need it? What happens?
Right, that's more me.
And again, that's more you. And so having those conversations where you go, okay, when was the last time that I used it or needed to access it? Now, again, we could do a deeper dive if it was more in the area of physical things like clothing or it could be clothing, it could be tools, it could be sports equipment, it could be papers. So identifying kind of where you feel that you get roadblocked and say, okay, so let's walk through some various scenarios. When was the last time you needed to access this particular thing? What would happen if you got rid of it and you needed it? Is it something that you could easily replace or, reclaim? For example, a lot of times, again, with paper clutter, people are like, well, what if I need it? And when we talk through nowadays, it would be probably quicker and easier for somebody to retrieve it digitally than it would be to sit through and spend hours going through a filing system trying to even retrieve it. So again, a lot of times we hold on to things because we think we should, or we think we'll be judged if we don't, especially when I see this again with a lot of times either with parents or with kids who have inherited things from, a parent or a grandparent, where they feel like that, it's wrong of them to get rid of something just because. And I always say that I don't really feel like that's necessarily a good enough reason. And if something is not serving you a purpose, if you're not using it, if it's not something that you can't easily get, then it's okay to give you the permission. And I think for people that struggle with emotional clutter, a lot of times it's just having someone give you that permission that it's okay to get rid of it. And get rid of it doesn't necessarily have to mean garbage or recycling. I mean, it depends on what it is.
Mm-hmm.
It could be donating. It could be, just giving it to somebody else. It could be selling it. It could, whatever it is. Or it very well just might be like, okay, it's time to recycle or shred this, depending on what your emotional clutter is. But I've had clients that do struggle a lot with it, and knowing kind of what the next step and talking it through a little bit allows them to say, okay, if I'm going through these scenarios, it's not as, it's easier for me to make these decisions.
Let's talk about your book. You wrote a book called Hot Mess, and it actually deals with how to get organized. Tell us a little bit about the book and what your favorite part is.
Awesome. Okay, absolutely. So I call it a quick little survival guide. It's a quick read. And it's broken into 3 distinct sections. So the first section is all about clutter. It defines clutter, like what is it? And again, we kind of touched briefly on that on the 3 types of clutter. Mm-hmm. It does a little bit more of like kind of the why behind. I always say, focus in on the why. Your clutter didn't just accumulate overnight. So is it something that you were taught? Is it something that you inherit, that you developed over time? So it's kind of identifying kind of the root cause of it and where it comes from. And then the second part is really talks a little bit about some specific strategies that you can use that are across the board, so that you identify maybe where your dominant source of clutter is. And then we talk a little bit about strategies to overcome them. And then the third section is broken down room by room. And I purposely put this section in at the end so that you could bop around based on the areas that make sense for you. So that you could read it, section 3, start to finish, or you could say, hey, I live in an apartment, so the section on garages doesn't make sense for me. I don't need to worry about that. Or, on the flip side, if you are somebody that has a lot of space and you are like, gosh, we have more rooms than we know what to do with, so we fill it with lots of stuff, the chapter on small space living might not be something that, brings value to you.
Sure.
So again, it focuses in on the different types of clutter, where it comes from, some different specific strategies that you can use across the board that I do applying to any particular area. I have a simple 3-step strategy that I apply pretty much. I call it my organizing ESP, which is really just an acronym for empty, sort, and purge. And you can apply that for something as small of an area as a desk drawer, or as large as your garage. It's just a matter of how you're going to approach the project and give you, again, kind of that roadmap. Because what happens is a lot of times, again, we start with the best of intentions, but we don't necessarily have a plan of how we're going to see it through. And then we get midway through and we're just, again, feeling overwhelmed or stressed out or just plain old tired. And we kind of lose sight of what that vision is. So what I try to do in the book is give you that roadmap so that you can help navigate your project from start to finish.
And another thing, see, if people are being motivated already to start looking around their home and say, hey, I've really got to get this under control, another helpful thing that you do, and I can tell you're a great speaker, you've got your own podcast. I've already listened to it many times, This Organized Life. It's provided me with some helpful tips to run my home smoothly. And you've also addressed in a topic that's been a hot button in my house, and that is kids helping around the house. So I was hoping you could give some parents with tweens and preteens who haven't asked much of their children yet, how can they now start to get them involved? Is it too late?
No, it's never too late. It's absolutely never too late. And it's also really never too early to get your kids involved. I mean, I probably got my kids involved as early on a very small level, but as early as 1 or 2, even just with we read a book out of the bookshelf and we put it back, and then as my kids started to grow, it was, again, you just incorporate some of these strategies as you would with teaching your kids to brush your teeth or make their bed or do whatever. And I think that it's really, these are life skills, and that's kind of how I try to approach it, is that, for me, as somebody who now has teenagers, what I want to see is, my goal is to kind of grow, raise functioning members of society. And so being able to teach them things as age appropriately, and I even have an age appropriate checklist, in the book, and I've talked about it before on the show, is, allowing them and empowering them to do things so that they have some skin in the game, whether it's clearing the dishes, making their bed, learning how to do their own laundry, or making their lunches, whatever that looks like. Because as parents, a lot of times we take on the burden of trying to do everything. And realistically, that just isn't sustainable, and it's not really healthy. And that's when our own stuff falls through the cracks, because we're trying to juggle not just our own schedules, but also that of our family members. And then ultimately, it isn't setting your kids up for success, because when the time does come for you to kind of pass that baton, they're not really prepared, not only in the tactical execution of how do I do my laundry, learning that, but how do I incorporate from, priority management or time management angle of okay, how do I fit this in with, my schoolwork and whatnot. So I think, it's never too late to start. But I think the earlier you can start, the better.
Let's talk a little bit about time management. You've said it's kind of the key to reduce feeling overwhelmed. Elizabeth and I are both overcommitters. I have, since I have 7-year-old twins and they're the only kids I have mentioned to Elizabeth before that I feel like I can't say no to anything because I don't want to miss anything. I have one chance to do this and to do this, so I say yes to everything. So how can you help or suggest an overcommitter to start using the word no more often?
I mean, that's a great question, and it's really, it's tricky. But I always try to tell people, think about what's really important and what's okay to let you slip through the cracks, because everybody wants to be killing it at work. Everybody wants to be, the best parent that attends every soccer game, every dance recital. You do everything for, whatever organization or, your church or wherever, your community. But the reality is we can't be all of those things all of the time. And so there's going to come points where we as adults have to pick and choose what we're prioritizing when. And that's hard. And that could mean we're going to go and we're going to be running around with our kids, so the house is kind of a mess because we just don't have time to pick it up. But then you have to be okay with that unless you're going to outsource that.
Sure.
You're going to say, I'm going to have less sleep. But I think you have to look at, if I keep doing all of these yeses, what's the downside? Are you snappy? Are you not having quality time at home? Are you finding that your body is breaking down? Where's the downfall for doing that? And I think it's hard, especially with parents. You want to be there for your kids. You want to see these things. You want to hit every milestone. But I also think as a parent, and this is coming from my own personal experience, I think it's okay, and I think it's somewhat important to be able to tell your kids that the world doesn't necessarily always revolve around them, and you can still love them and support them without being at every single event that they do or every single thing, and that there's other people and responsibilities and requirements that take away, that might require your time. And I think that that's an important lesson for kids to learn. But it's also something that you have to feel comfortable with too.
We have to learn that as well. Yeah.
Yeah. And I think that's the biggest thing is I would never tell somebody how to prioritize, but the fact that you do need to prioritize somewhere is one of those tough adulting realities that we have to do.
Absolutely. Now, we mentioned the podcast, This Organized Life. Now, when you introduced and expanded your business into that podcast, were you surprised at how many hours it took to really create your content and bring it to life?
Oh, my gosh, 100%. When I started my show, which was in 2017, I had listened to a few podcasts, but I certainly did not have any idea of what I was really getting into. And it happens to be one of my favorite modalities that I communicate with my audience. I absolutely love it, but it is so unbelievably time consuming. That's not a bad thing. It's just a reality. And so when I talk to people that, are asking me about maybe potentially starting their own show, I'm just very honest with them about, listen, this is what my reality looks like, and everybody, can pretty much, structure their show however they want. I will say though, being organized in my life has allowed me to really kind of streamline the process for my podcasting. So yes, there's a lot of content creation. Yes, there's a lot of moving parts where it's booking guests and all that, and promotion and all the other kind of, parts to the whole process. But I have streamlined things in a way that has allowed me to just not stress some of the logistical stuff like intake forms and scheduling with guests and show notes and prep work and things like that. I've automated those really time-consuming pieces, which allows me to then focus in on content creation with my guests. So it's a matter of how much mental load you have and where you're going to spend it.
Very well said. And we launched in 2017 as well. Kind of, we knew what we were getting into because Elizabeth and I were both working in radio before. But the fact that you're putting together so much time soliciting guests and trying to get people on the show, writing up what you want to ask them so that they can get approved by whoever. I mean, and then editing and promotion. It's like a rabbit hole of never-ending stuff. So I don't know if we were totally prepared. So that's why I was kind of curious to see what your experience was.
I completely relate. Yes.
So,
I commend anybody that puts together a show.
In addition to telling us about how to be organized, you also did an 8-episode miniseries I found interesting called This Entrepreneur's Life. Tell us a little bit about what people can find in those episodes.
So obviously I talk a lot. I wrote a book and my business is based about teaching people organizing strategies to help simplify their life. But one of the other things that I do is I'm a big believer. I was very fortunate that I was able to take something that I was passionate about and turn that into a profession. And I see a lot of other people. My core demographic audience is women. Not that I don't have men listeners, and I love my men listeners, but a lot of the people who that I connect with are women that are in seasons of life, whether they're returning to the workforce after having kids, or maybe they're making a transition to become more entrepreneurial, leaving their kind of corporate 9-to-5 job and doing something out on their own. And I wanted to create a platform, even though there's a gazillion really, really great business podcasts out there. I wanted to just talk a little bit about my own personal experience and journey as an entrepreneur and talk about some of the pitfalls that I maybe fell into and how other people could avoid them. And so I did season 1 as an 8-episode miniseries, and we're going to be planning to roll out season 2 because we got a great response to it. And it was really just bringing on influencers and experts in areas of, legal, email marketing, social media, just some, time-saving, scheduling platforms, little things that you might not think about when you're thinking about, actually running your business. A lot of times I find that people get into businesses because they love what they do. They're passionate about what that is, but running the business side of things is a whole other animal. And so I don't want to deter people from starting their own business because they are overwhelmed with the logistical side of being an entrepreneur. So as somebody who is kind of like in the trenches, I wanted to just put that content out there. And fortunately, we got a really, we've gotten a great response to it. So thanks for asking. And yeah, we ran it right off of our same feed. So we did we ran it as a bonus episode each week for 8 weeks. And it's on our website. We have it broken down so that people could just binge listen to them.
I think that's the best way to do it because then people know where to find all that content in one spot. So that was probably a smart thing and not create a whole new feeds for it. So.
Well, thank you.
Well, we're in Wisconsin, and I know you're in Pennsylvania, so we're probably wondering the same thing. When is this winter ever going to be over? But I know that summer's going to...
Oh, my goodness. I can't wait.
Yeah. Summer will eventually be here someday, and kids will be out of school. So what tips can you give us to survive the time that the kids are constantly at home while we're still trying to get things done? Are we bad parents for telling the kids we got to get work done before we can have fun?
No, not at all. And as a matter of fact, depending on the ages of your kids, I think it's a great motivational tool to help empower your kids to get involved and help lighten that load. I remember when my girls were younger, they're 18 and 15 now, and I still do it, but especially when they were probably like your girls' age, when they really were like, Mommy, we want to play with you, or we want to watch TV, or we want to go to the park, or whatever it is that they want to do. And I would say, because I'm a little bit type A, and I was like, I wanted to clean up the dinner dishes before we
Yes,
sat down
me
and
too.
played.
Mhm.
And I would say to them, listen, the sooner, this stuff has to happen. These jobs have to get done. So the sooner we can get it done, the more time I'll have to spend with you. So if we all pitch in and help out, it'll get done quicker. So, I think the biggest commodity that we all have is time. I think that is the most valuable commodity, more than money, more than anything material that you can ever, that you could ever dream up, is really the value of time. And I think our kids, as much as, they might be interested in technology and other material things, ultimately, I think they really want your time, or time for them to be able to do the things that they want. So if you use these tasks as incentive to help get things done, you'll actually, I think it'll help navigate the process. And again, let them know the importance that they're important, but also running a home and being a responsible person that values, and prioritizes things that need to get done. It's just a part of, of life.
Yeah, and teaching them life balance too, like we talked about before. If we can involve them, the more that we can involve them in the chores or whatever tasks need to be done, like you said, the quicker that gets done and the faster we can have fun.
And I try to position it, and again, you, even though you have twin girls, I'm sure their personalities are very different in some ways.
Mm-hmm.
And, I have one daughter that's very much like a rule follower, and I just ask her to do something, and more often than not, she pretty much does it with a little pushback.
Okay.
And I have another one that I could be like screaming at the top of my lungs like a raving lunatic, and she still, it's like, she still doesn't really want to do it, or gives me pushback. And so, I do a lot of research on kind of personality types and communication styles, because I think, again, just like there's no one size fits all for, organizing, I think that, how we communicate and what's going to make that light bulb pop on is going to be different for different people. And I really try to talk to both of my kids, and I do this with my clients also, in terms of just choices and consequences. So, when my kids were younger, I was in there with them, helping them clean up their rooms and teaching them the ways to do it. But now I'm like, they know what they need to do. And it's like, you have a choice. If you don't clean up your room, then you don't get to go to this party, or you don't get to go out, and it's not threat. It's just, this is how Team Palau works.
Right.
And everyone's kind of got their role on the team. And so there's different things. So it's choices and consequences. If you choose not to do this, then that's fine. But the consequence is, there's a consequence for that. And so, and I've learned to try to not fly off the handle as much. I used to, I think, get more emotional about it, because if it was something that was as valuable to me, I wanted it to be valuable to every member of my family. But then I realized it really might not be, like the dirty dishes might bother me, but it really might not bother somebody else. And so kind of saying, this is how it makes me feel, and by you not doing this, I feel that it's disrespectful. When you leave the dishes around, it makes me feel like you think I'm just the maid and I'm here to clean up after you, So it's about having those conversations that will say, listen, we're all members of, of this team, and we have to make it work.
It's funny because I know we're talking about kids and stuff, but I can't help but think that this is also good marriage advice, because my wife and I have the same conversations all the time.
Yes, 100%.
Where she'll say, this is really important to me, and for me, it's like I don't care if the sink is empty at the end of the night. Like, it doesn't bother me. I can do it the next day, and I am a big procrastinator, where she is very much wanting everything to be in its place at the right time. So. It's funny that the advice kind of applies.
Yeah, it has to be with picking your I'm sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off.
That's okay.
And just pick your battles. Just like, pick your battles. Is it really important? And just let people know, what is, and again, what's your time worth? And sometimes, it's a matter of, we are both super busy. We have limited time, and maybe this job that bothers me, maybe I need to outsource. Maybe it's helpful to to have an outside person come in and help me. Maybe it's I should outsource the lawn or whatever. And not everybody's in a position to do that. But when you think about, we all unfortunately live these really overscheduled lives. I think to some degree, most of us probably all suffer from calendar clutter. I think that there's a little bit of physical, emotional, and calendar clutter in all of us,
Agreed.
And it's just a matter of how much time is that pulling away from the stuff that we really want to be doing.
Now, we live in such a very digital world. In fact, we can take a picture at any moment of our lives if we want to. So many of us are drowning in digital photos and videos. Have you found any organizational ways that you can recommend for people to deal with the massive amounts of photos that are just everywhere on all of their devices?
Yeah, it's such a great question. And for, again, I don't think that there's a one size fits all, but my biggest thing is, I tell people to try to get all of their stuff, their videos and their photos, off of their phone. Now, I've got probably thousands on my camera roll that I have to delete, but because it's just easy to be there, let's be honest.
Yes.
Like if you picked up my phone right now, you would see them. But what I do is I use a third-party app. I happen to use Shutterfly. Don't get paid by Shutterfly, not endorsed by Shutterfly, but I've used them for years. I also am a big Dropbox person, again, purely editorial. And so for me, but whether you use like Google Drive or there's a million other different ones out there, again, my personal preference, I just happen to use Shutterfly and Dropbox because it's what I started with. And I just find it very easy and user-friendly. Again, whenever I think of any type of filing, right, and you think of photos as a filing,
Yes.
You want the ease of retrieval. How quickly can you access the information that you want? What's going to be the best way? And if stuff's on your phone or on your device, and God forbid something happens and it's not backed up, you can lose it. Now, yes, you can sync stuff to the cloud and all that, and that's great. But you want the ease of retrieval.
Yeah.
And for me, I want, now that my kids are older, I want a central place where anybody in my family can go and access our photos. So I just simply every year go in and create an album that is titled that year. And as I take life events that I want, not just like, oh, I'm at the store, let me take a quick picture of this, but
Right.
as I do something that, it could be my kids at a game, it could be, we're at a family event or a picnic or whatever. I upload those to that year. Now, obviously, I have a couple of other exceptions. If you do a family vacation or you have a big milestone, a wedding, a graduation, you may have a separate album for that. But I just try to keep it one album per year that everyone in our family has access to. And then you can just go in and add photos to whenever you want. And then I know for my girls, it's been great because they sometimes have projects at school and they need to access photos from when they were, younger or something that we did.
Yep.
And when I talk about the ease of retrieval, they can just quickly go in themselves and say, oh, let me pull something up when I was 7, and they'll go to the year that applies, and they can access the stuff. So again, when you talk about the time saving, everything is right there, and it's very turnkey. And that's, for me, what I think is best, is to find something that is easily accessible.
So when you say you're uploading things periodically to a year, are you kind of doing it like maybe every couple of nights? You sit in bed and you're like, okay, I'm going to upload this and this and this?
I don't do it that often. I don't do it that often. As a matter of fact, I did one the other night, and I probably hadn't done it in like a month.
Okay.
And then in a perfect world, you're deleting, because obviously now we could take 300 photos in a second. You know what I mean? Like, it's ridiculous. So, you try to be mindful. Oh, this is another little tip is, I know Shutterfly, and I would imagine some of the other ones as well have this, but they have the like automatic upload. Do not turn that on, because then every time you're like, oh, I'm at the store, is this the is this the pasta you wanted me to buy, or do you like these shoes? That gets uploaded, and that's just adding to the clutter.
Yeah.
So always do a manual upload, because then it allows you to hopefully do a little bit of a purge before, and so you're only uploading the photos that you truly want in there, not the, random photos that you just took because, you saw somebody funny in line and you wanted to make fun of them.
Very true. No, I understand. I've been in that automatic situation before where I'm like, why are all of these photos here? So yeah, do it manual.
Yes.
I agree. So
and people think, oh, automatic, it's going to be super easy, but no, it's just adding more to the
it gives you all the garbage
clutter
too.
in the back end.
Yeah.
Yes. Yep.
Laurie, on Fancounters, we love to hear about our guest encounters with fans. And I know you've given seminars to hundreds of women and dozens of media appearances. So have you ever had an experience with some weird or crazy or fun people that you will never forget?
Oh, that's such a good question. I have met people, knock on wood, I would say. I haven't met anybody that's really crazy.
Okay.
I don't have any scary things. I have been a couple places where people have said, "Oh, I know who you are," and I was at Podcast Movement, a conference that I don't know if you were there back in July, and I had a couple people just randomly that knew me from the show and from my book and whatnot stop me at Podcast Movement, and I was just flattered because I don't see myself as anybody that's so super noteworthy in that sense.
Right.
But yeah, it is always nice to know that you've had a positive impact on somebody, on somebody's, on whether it's helping them to simplify something in their life or from an entrepreneurial perspective, helping to inspire, motivate them is always a nice thing.
You are very motivating, and I'm really glad that you decided to come on Fancounters today. My last question before I let you go is if people are just so lost, give us one place to start. What's one thing we can do today to make a difference?
Again, so there's a couple. I think the easiest thing is the 1 minute rule, which if you could do something in 1 minute, do it, which means hang up your coat, hang up your keys. If there's a task that you can do, it's quicker to put away than just put down where it is. Open the mail, those types of little tasks that add up over time. And again, you think, what's the big deal if I just drop my keys when I come down, when I come in the door?
Mm-hmm.
Those are the types of things that it's not a big deal to just drop them down. But if we're constantly just doing these mindless acts, which I totally get with all the mental, stuff that's on our plates, we do. But where that starts to become a pain point is when you're like, okay, I need my keys and I can't remember where I put them.
Yes.
So it's not so much that you're trying to create an environment that's Pinterest worthy, is that you're trying to create a routine and a habit so that you don't have to rely on your memory, because our brains are so taxed with everything that's going on in our lives that these other tasks should not have to take up bandwidth. So if you think about it and reframe it as that it's just about the ease of retrieval and anything that's causing you stress. I always tell people when people say, what's the best place to start organizing in your house? I say, what's the area that's giving you the biggest pain point? And that's going to look different for everybody.
Sure.
For you, it might be your home office. For somebody else, it could be the kitchen. For somebody else, it could be their bedroom. So I say, if you're going to pick an area, make it manageable. Start small, because your clutter didn't accumulate overnight, and it is a process to go through it. But, if you just break it into these small little areas, then you start to feel the wins, as opposed to saying, I'm going to just, go big, right off the bat.
Yep. Good advice. 1 minute rule. I'm going to remember that next time my coat is sitting on the the banister. Put it away.
Absolutely. It's true. It's a game changer.
Well, where can we continue to follow your journey on social media?
So I am at Simply, SIMPLY, the letter B like boy, organized. on Facebook and Instagram. Twitter, it's SMPLY because there's no I. But I'm all over Facebook and Instagram and Pinterest as well. It's Simply Be Organized. But the best place to connect up with me is on my website, which is simply the letter B like boy, Organized, and you can link right to my podcast, This Organized Life there. And you can also binge listen to This Entrepreneur's Life.
Awesome. You are a very busy woman. I love it. You're doing a very good job. And you even took time to give us all these great tips. So thanks again for your time today and for coming on Fancounters.
Thanks for having me.
Absolutely.
Of course, it's my pleasure. Thanks so much for having me.
Our thanks to Laurie Palau for coming on the program today. Very helpful information for me. I hope you found something that you can apply to your life as well, which is why I wanted her on the show. I just love her podcast so much. It's called This Organized Life, and you can get it wherever you're listening to this podcast. Apologies that Elizabeth couldn't be here for the rest of the interview, but she will be back next week with me and another guest. Don't forget to follow us on our private Facebook group, Sharpie Nation. Just say I want to join and I'll let you in. It's where we discuss all of our episodes and give you some exclusive content. So be sure to join there. Also, we're on Twitter at Fancounters Live. And if you want to suggest a guest, you can do that by emailing hello@fancounters.com. I hope you enjoyed the show as much as I did, and I hope you have a good week. We'll talk to you again next Friday.
This was a podcast from the PodFix Network. You can check out more shows like it at podfixnetwork.com.